right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I am Logan Ryles, and today I'm talking with Scott Blade, international best-selling author of 17 novels in his acclaimed Jack Widow series, where he takes us on action-packed adventures featuring a drifter, an outlaw, and a hero, all in one. Scott, man, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's really fun to talk to you. I read Gone Forever recently and greatly enjoyed it, like I told you. I noticed you've got quite a few of these novels out now. Tell us about Jack Widow. Where did that idea come from?
So, the comparison to Jack Reacher is apt. Everybody's going to make it. They're going to ask me about it. But basically, it started, I discovered Killing Floor back in the late 2000s, like 2009, 2008. Just became a huge fan. And it always had this idea. I've been writing books since 1990. My first book was on a typewriter. I was 11.
No kidding.
Yeah, and that's a great story. If you want, I'll share with you that book. This has happened to me a couple of times. It became a huge blockbuster. Somebody ripped it off from me. Okay, but we'll talk about that maybe different.
Wow, that would be something.
Yeah, but I've always had this. I've always had different ideas. And one of them is of a drifter sort of character, because even in the 90s, I had this idea before I knew who Jack Reacher was. It's just that Lee Child had beaten to it, and he had. It's great. He perfected it. But if you look at the Jack Reacher archetype, it's really just John Rambo. It's really just who is a drifter from the army. Don't send your hate mail at me. But it's also the Incredible Hulk TV show too.
Sure.
He was a drifter
samurai
who solved mysteries. The samurais from the old samurai stories, but Kung Fu that Bruce Lee made was
absolutely,
that was the same thing. So it's not an original idea in that respect. And the thing I liked about it was the if you're a Michael Conley, if you're Michael Crichton, or James Patterson, or somebody with Alex Cross, right, or one of these authors, you're limited with the location. And the thing one of the things I loved about Jack Reacher and that idea of a drifter is that you can write a completely different book in the same series that can be partially a different genre and have a new location, and as a drifter myself, because I used to go, I've been hitchhiking, I've been, wandering around. I've just always been sort of a gypsy, since I left, the house at 18. I would just go cross country, across the world, just love it. I love being a stranger in a strange land. And anyway, so that's what appealed to me was location changes and genre changes, like a mystery, a thriller, an action thriller, a spy. That's what's great about Jack Widow is I try to do a different take as many times as I can with a different book,
I noticed you call yourself a nomadvalist. Am I saying that correctly? Nomadvalist?
Yeah, nomadvalist, right.
Tell me about that. Has that got to do with wandering?
Yes. So I'm not really sure how the combination of the two came about. I'm just always we talked earlier about being business minded as an artist, and I was thinking, this is something great that Lee Child is a hero of mine. It's gonna be hard for me not to mention him, but I was thinking about how he came up with these brilliant, you could call them slogans. I'm not really sure what the right word is, but they're just character things about Jack Reacher. And I wanted to, before I wrote the first Jack Widow book, I wanted to come up with similar things for Jack Widow that would be staples, that's what I'm looking for, of Jack Widow, right?
Okay.
And so, for example, with Jack Reacher, one is Reacher said nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And he gives headbutts. He's known for headbutts, he's known for coffee, and he's known for saying nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do the same with Jack Widow. And in doing so, I was thinking, well, I'm a drifter before I even knew who Reacher was. I have a place to live and stuff, but I don't do it so extreme where I only own a toothbrush. But I do leave my house and go places, and I'll wander and I'll travel, and I'll Airbnb somewhere and stay in another country for weeks or months, and I've done that multiple times. My passport is all stamped up. And so I thought, I'm basically living the life without the books. And then I started writing the books. And so I came up with this. I'm a nomad who's a novelist. And so I just thought, well, just squish them together, because that's what people do now. They squish words together, and it's nomadvalist. And I just thought, well, this is a really cool word. I copyrighted it. Nobody can use it. It's not anywhere.
Good for you.
It's like a staple of me.
So you wandered all these places. You talk about Jack wandering around, Widow wandering around, and I see in different books he's got all these. I mean, like the first one he's in Mississippi, the second one it's Winter Territory. Have you visited all these places, or?
Some of them I've been to. A lot of it is just Google research. Some of them I make up. I tend to make up a lot of the towns he might go to, because, like in Winter Territory, it's based in Wyoming, I think it's Wyoming, and a Native American reservation that I did make up. That's near Yellowstone, if I remember correctly. That's like 16 books ago, so it's hard to remember all
quite
of
a
it.
few.
But yeah, like a lot of my fans will pick up on things that I didn't even, like I might say Widow never rode a horse before, and they'll go, well, in Winter Territory he did ride a horse.
Yeah, they'll do that.
I forgot. Yeah, you're right. So anyway, in that one, I remember, I can't remember who it was, but one fan or reader had emailed me complaining that there is no Native American reservation near this town that you based this book in. I grew up in this town. So I just started making up the towns. It's just easier that way. I don't have to worry about getting blowback over.
Okay.
So yes, the answer to your question is sometimes I do go to those places. Sometimes they're places I've been to or have association with, and I just research them pretty much.
But obviously, when you're traveling this much, you're experiencing landscapes and cultures that are going to impact these books, whether it's a specific place or not. I'm sure you've been to Native American reservations and you've slept outside in the snow. I have
gone through them. I didn't spend as much time as Widow. A lot of them you can't, some of them I think you can tourist through. Some of them, they don't really welcome people on. I know, like on the top corner of Washington State, there is a big Native American reservation there where I don't think they really like you. You could go anywhere you want, but I don't really look kind of on outsiders too much, Sure. And Widow experiences that in Winter Territory. And almost every book he's in, he experiences people that don't like outsiders.
There's always somebody there to stand in the way, just to be difficult, which is a staple of the genre. I love that about the genre. And you mentioned, like you said, the readers refreshing your memory on different things that happened in the series. I've had the same experience. When you write several books, like at some point, it's all kind of blending together a little bit. But out of 17, there's 17 of them out now. You're working on number 18. Is there one that sticks out? Favorite writing memory or a favorite story?
It's not like one of those where somebody will say, well, they're all my babies. It really is. And I'm, like I told you before, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I have a lot of confidence because, I do a lot of work on these books and people do seem to react to them. And I pretty much love all of them. It'd be easier for me to say which is my least favorite, which is ironic because people tell me they love it. A lot of people tell me it is their favorite. But I would say one of my best memories of one of these books, like if someone asked me, what's your favorite? I usually will start with Without Measure, which is book 4. And the reason is because that's an action thriller from first point of view, but it's a whodunit kind of mystery. I'll tell you about the little snippet of it real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
Is for people that don't know, this one is about. I try to take on topics, even if they're controversial, without having like nothing political. I don't try to do political leans and stuff because everybody is whatever their beliefs are, their beliefs.
Yeah.
But I try to take on like real events. And so this one is about Jack Widow, at the very beginning, he's in a diner. He's been up all night because he got a ride from a trucker who was just talking and talking. And, Jack Widow is just exhausted. And this is like, I think like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. And he's getting coffee because, that's what he does. He's getting coffee at a little diner in this small military town in California. And there's this, it's a very small town. The demographics are mostly white, as you would think in a small mountain marine military town in California.
Sure.
And this Arab guy walks in a full get-up Marine uniform, and he's an officer. And Jack Widow recognizes that immediately. The thing that he recognizes too is that the guy has a gun, holstered. And it used to be you could carry gun Marine. I don't know what it is now. They may have changed it, but when I wrote it, you couldn't carry a gun in public on your uniform.
Did not know that.
As a Marine officer. Used to be you could, but I know they changed it. I don't remember the year, but I think probably 2011 or something like that. Again, like I said, they may have changed it back. Things change so quickly in the military. But at the time you couldn't. And so he's looking at this guy and he's seeing all these, the guy is like stoic and looking away and stone cold and just like sitting there like he goes every day to this diner. And Jack Widow just looks at him. He's got this lone gunman look on his face, and that's a hot topic. This was before we had all those mass shootings. I think that was 2019 or something. Yeah. But it is a big problem in America is mass shootings. Mm-hmm. And so Jack Widow sits with him and tries to talk to him just to kind of feel him out. Now, remember, he's sleepy too. So maybe he's misjudging it, and he's trying to feel him out. So the Marine leaves and Jack Widow goes to a hotel room and gets some sleep. And like an hour later, the MPs are knocking at his door from the Marine base. And it turns out that officer went into the Marine base, shot and killed 5 people, and then killed himself. And Jack Widow's the last person they saw talking to him. So it's very suspect. Yeah. So this, not to give away the story, but as it goes on, there's always something more than meets the eye. And Jack Widow starts to unravel a mystery. Did he really do that? Or did he not really do that? Did he really kill 5 people or was he framed? Right. And so, so it's a really good one. So the reason why I like that one so much is because I had no clue who did it until the last page. Yeah. And
so you don't write with an outline.
Sometimes I write with an outline. Sometimes I write with a rough outline. Sometimes I don't outline at all. It just really kind of depends. Sometimes I follow characters and see where they're going. If I'm in a tight deadline, like I'm in one right now, kind of, then I'll probably follow an outline, because otherwise I'll be veering off. Sometimes the thing I hate doing is cutting sections out after I worked on them. It feels like I wasted time working. And so I try to make them all fit, even if I ramble, I try to make it fit, and, but Without Measure is a really good one because for me, because I didn't know who the bad guys were or, if it was true or I knew something, but I didn't know like what it turned out to be. And the twist is a good twist. And so that one got me. Most of the twists I usually know, like the one I'm working on now, I know the twist before, and I've only written, 20 pages maybe so far. So I've got a long way to go. So I know the twist in this one, the last one I did, I knew kind of the twist too. And sometimes I don't. And that was just really fascinating that it just all came together and worked out, It's like sewing like a sweater or what do you call like a blanket or something, a quilt. Like sewing a quilt blindfolded, and then you look and you're like, hey, it's a pattern, And so that was a beautiful experience. But all of them are really great. I mean, Gone Forever is great. A Reason to Kill, people really love. Without Measure is really great. I'll tell you the one that when I think of my least favorite, that just shocks me. People love it. It's book 10. It's called The Devil's Stop. It's a shorter one. I think it's 3 clocks in at 300 pages probably on paperback. Maybe a little more than that. And That one is just a very simple story about a missiler who goes missing. A missiler is the guys that in the the missile silos,
Yeah.
the nuclear missile silos
Control
across
guys.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes missing, and his pregnant wife shows up in a small town, like just like Widow. She looks like she does not belong, and she's like 9 months pregnant, ready to pop, and she's searching for her husband, you know. And of course, everybody just thinks, well, he ran out on you, blah blah blah. But he's a missiler. Those guys are like they're super calm because of the stress levels, right? You have to be always cool, calm, and collected.
Mhm.
He would not just vanish on her, is what she says. And so Jack Widow helps her figure out what's going on. And then, of course, there's nuclear weapons involved and bad guys and all that. And so that one to me is just a straight, there is a little bit of a mystery, but it's more of just a straight like action thriller. And so that's why I probably would say that's my least favorite. But that one, a lot of people tell me it is their favorite. So
Isn't that
I
always
don't have a,
surprising?
yeah,
I've
I
got
don't
one
have a
like
bad
that
one,
too. When I wrote it and I released it, I actually told my editor, I was like, I just don't have a good feeling about this. And it was the most popular of the series. So
Yeah. Strange. Yeah.
you don't always know. But now you're talking about
Yeah, you don't.
nuclear and missilers and Marines uniforms wearing, I mean, like all this is not necessarily stuff you can just Google. So like, tell me about your research process. Do you like to talk to people, or what works for you?
I don't talking to people is not my number one. Like say there's a toolkit, it wouldn't be at the top of my toolkit. But I
Okay.
do have, as I mentioned to you before, a guy I grew up with in high school, or actually even before that, I think we were in the first grade together. He might be retired now. He would be my age, so he would be early 40s. Um, and he was a submariner, on a nuclear submarine, and
Wow.
he was in the Navy 20 years, whatever. He might still be in. I really don't know. I don't talk to him that often. But if I sat with him one time, I was working on a book that was dedicated to Tom Clancy. It's book, what is it? Book 7, I think it's called The Midnight Caller.
Mhm.
And that one has a nuclear submarine. It's kind of like a Hunt for October sort of plot. And I had all these questions, so I would interview him and ask him about these things. And but mostly, I'll look them up, I'll read, I'll watch YouTube videos from like people that I'm big on sources. So like
Yeah.
like we go through this, not to get political, but we've been going through this for the last couple of years in this country of people think they're like an expert on viruses and they
Mhm.
don't know, they've never been to epidemiology school, or what I mean, like you're not
Yeah.
qualified to talk about viruses. So I'll go and research the source of something. Like if you go to Wikipedia, I found Wikipedia, you can't use it as a cited source because you never know who wrote on it, but you could go down to the bottom and look at their sites, their
Mhm.
citations, right? And so I
Yeah.
just go right to the citation. And if it's from the Pentagon, I mean, that's about as good as you can get, you
Yeah.
know. I'll research actual, like with the submarine, for example, I'll research actual like boring government jargon about the Seawolf submarine, whatever it was that I had in the book, you know. And that shit's so boring.
Yeah.
But I'll do it. I'll do it because I want. And then you know what? 99% of my research doesn't even end up on the page anyway. But I
Exactly.
do it just so I
Yeah.
can become an expert in whatever it is I'm talking about at that moment.
So, and that leads you to some cool places, and you probably learn all kinds of
Yeah. And then I've
things
been to a
that.
lot of places and seen a lot of things, and I've met a lot of interesting people, for better or for worse. I'm not saying I'm like Ernest Hemingway, but I have a very Ernest Hemingway kind of life, which
Yeah.
I cultivated on purpose, hopefully without the end that Ernest Hemingway had.
Please.
But he was very, I like that he was very eclectic, you know.
Yeah.
And I used to read him in college. I have, as you know, I've told you I have a master's degree in international law, but I've also
Mhm.
got my first bachelor's degree as English literature. And Ernest Hemingway was my favorite, back in the day, back when I was in my early 20s. And so I just saw myself as like, man, this guy, he fought in a war. He like got injured. He like traveled the world, lived in Paris. I mean, married, divorced, married, divorced, married, divorced. Just a very interesting life. Definitely you can't say Ernest Hemingway had a boring life,
Right.
right? And that's
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like I want to have just wanted to lead a very interesting, action-packed, adventurous life. I didn't want to be stuck in a cubicle, working for the man, quote, or whatever. And so that's what I mean when I say like I vision myself as a bit of an Ernest Hemingway. Not that I'm as good as he is, not even close, but you know, so
I think when you're a thriller writer, I mean, yeah, my readers know, and I kind of make a joke out of it. I live a very vanilla life. I like my grill and my little suburbia and everything else. But I think that's maybe a bit of an exception, because when you're a thriller writer, you've got to have at least some of the sort of life. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Some of these things in your life, whether you are an adventurer or a traveler, or if you've got a passion for putting it on the page, that stuff's got to come into your life at some point in order to be genuine. And I've
yeah.
had some of those experiences where I traveled for a much briefer period, lived out of a van and wandered around the country and that kind of thing. And
It's very popular right now. It's called van life, the nomad van life. Yeah, it's very
the
popular.
way I did it was
The
not the
pandemic
popular way.
has done that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
I couldn't do it all the time like Jack Widow does. The way he lives or the way Reacher lives, similar. I couldn't do that all the time. I have a house, I have a mortgage, I have a dog. But every once in a while, I used to do it more when I was younger, but in college, we called it backpacking, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I would go backpacking. And so that's how a lot of that stuff comes about, is just firsthand like experience. But like what you're talking about, a great example is guns. You're a thriller writer, I'm a thriller writer. You're from the South, I'm from the South. I've always been around guns. I have guns. I like guns. I don't think everybody should have a gun, and what I mean is I think everybody that's qualified should have the right to have a gun. I believe in the Second Amendment, but at the same time, not everybody is qualified, that's just for our own safety. Like not everybody should be driving a car, what I mean? Yeah. And it's similar. But anyway, on the gun aspect with Jack Widow, of course, there's MP5s, there's, 5.78s, there's all kinds of different just weapons. And so I go and shoot them, and I didn't always do that. I didn't start out that way. I thought I had enough knowledge on guns to just research it, but you can't, because the people that read that are gun lovers, they will write you the most and tell you, well, that gun doesn't have a safety, or that gun doesn't carry that many bullets, or whatever.
They know.
Just had somebody, I just had somebody email me about a 44 Magnum on a Colt Anaconda, I forget. Yeah. And they said, no, it's a 357 Magnum. And I Google it. No, it's a 44. I was right the first time. But, sometimes they're right. And you have to be, so I go research by just going and firing different weapons and like driving different cars and whatever it is Jack Widow's doing,
Because when you read a book where you can tell the author does not, and this is, like you said, us both growing up in the South, growing up around a lot of firearms, we see this, but you'll see a book where you can just tell, and in a lot of parts of the world, you've got authors who don't have the ability to go to a gun range, and you can tell, you can see that, and it's not, it's not to their shame, but it does make me think, okay, if I'm here and I can tell you don't know what it feels like to fire a gun, then I have to be really conscious of how something I'm writing that I don't really understand about might be visible to someone who's, I'll give you an example that's kind of funny. I've never been a big smoker. I like cigars, but never smoked cigarettes. I had a character.
Same here, exactly the same, yeah.
So I had a character who smoked cigarettes. Reed smoked cigarettes, and my wife has smoked some, and she confronted me one day when she was reading through it. She said, come with me. And she took me down to the gas station and bought cigarettes. And she said, you're going to smoke these before you write anymore. And she was right. Like I owed that to the reader to kind of understand the things that can't be researched as much as possible.
It gives a more real world feel.
Yeah.
Like there's helicopters, different helicopters in some of my books. The Double Man at the very beginning, there's bad guys that have I can't even remember the name of the helicopter. I forgot it now, but they have this helicopter that the Coast Guard uses. It's a brand they use, and it's got the bucket, with the cable and the winch and all that.
Yeah.
And they're torturing this poor guy at the beginning by dunking him into the water, and then they chit chat like it's no big deal, and then they pull him out of the water, trying to question him.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to say, well, what did you tell whoever it was? And I've never flown a helicopter. I don't have a pilot's license. I have no interest in pilot's license. I'm a little afraid of heights. And
You and me both.
I think I've been in a helicopter, but that's not really the same. They're all different, right?
Yeah.
So you can't expect me to be able to do that. And I've had Air Force people write me and say, "Hey, that helicopter doesn't y'all like you say it does or whatever." And that's just, I'll read a book and I'll watch YouTube videos, or I'll watch a movie that has accurate helicopter depiction. I'll learn the terminology for helicopters. And then half the time, I don't have to use a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, you reach a confidence level is what it is. Like with guns is just a perfect example. You reach a confidence level when you own a gun, you use guns, proper firearm safety and proper firearm use, how to clear a room, so on and so on. Stuff that Jack Widow would know.
Yeah.
Because he's an expert, therefore I have to be an expert. But my process is I'll become an expert at whatever's in the book I'm working on. As soon as I'm done with that book, pretty much a couple of days later, I have forgotten everything I learned. It's like I take garbage and I take it and just throw it out, and then I'll learn something new. I can't retain it. And Jack Widow just retains it, through all of it, because he would, that's his career.
Well, I had that experience too of forgetting stuff, but I also have an experience where when you read a lot and you talk to a lot of people, you sort of like develop this sort of internal library of random facts that become useful. Like I'll give an example. The other day we were driving and saw a coyote, and my wife Googled the coyote and we started talking about it. And one thing I learned about coyotes is a dog runs with his tail up. Coyote runs with his tail down.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, but that's the kind of cool fact.
Now I'm going to be watching my dog.
Yeah, you're going to be watching your dog.
Yeah.
That's the kind of
I wonder where he is actually.
To a book.
He's awful quiet.
I think I saw him pass a little while ago. What kind of dog is he?
He's a German Shepherd. He's all black. He's beautiful. You ever seen one of those?
I only in pictures.
Django. His name is Django, of course. Babble boy, come here.
There he goes.
J-Man, come here. Django, come here. Watch this.
Oh,
he's terrified
wow.
of this. Watch. See, he's terrified of fly swatters. It's strange.
That is odd. But he's running with his tail up. I love German Shepherds. We have a Boston Terrier and a Wiener dog.
I grew up with a Wiener dog. Man, they live a long time. This Wiener dog was like 19 or something.
This one's like 8 months old. So he's gonna be around forever.
You got a long,
Yeah, he's annoying.
The boys are a little bit I'm not a fan of the boys, let me put it like that. They're very aggressive, and well, the ones that I've encountered, they're very aggressive. The females are like so sweet. The one that I only know the one I had, but maybe they're different, maybe they're not all the same.
Now, does Jack have a dog at any point in the series?
Yeah, in the last book, it's called The Protector. There is a dog that's a police dog. I don't want to give anything away, but it's he ends up half the book like with Jack Widow, and it's a German Shepherd, of course, and and that's a really good one too.
What's it like writing a story? Are all the books in first person?
No, they're all different. I didn't do first person for like about 2 years straight or so, and then the last two I did were both first person. The next one I'm doing is going to be third person, just to break it up, because normally I stick to third person. As you probably know, third person is just easier from an audience point of view, from a reader point of view, because you can see the bad guys, what they're doing. When it's first person, you're always in Jack Widow's head, which is a scary place to be. But you're always in his head. And the thing about that is, you experience things as he experiences them, which isn't always conducive to the story. When you have a bunch of characters, like a book with a nuclear submarine, where you're going to have all these different characters, you really can't do first person,
Yeah.
because you got to see what the bad guys are doing, what are the stakes, and so on.
Yeah.
So third person's really better to do in that regard. But
Logistically.
first person gives you a detailed, account, and it keeps you on your toes too. Like a whodunit is really good in a first person.
I agree. And I think the biggest challenge I've never done a series both ways. So my current series are third person. I'm working on a new series and I can't decide. I want to do it first person, but I'm concerned about logistics. And I've not considered alternating book to book. But the reason that made me think of it with the dog is I wanted to put a dog in the story, but I've wondered about the logistics of having a dog in the story, because is the dog going to go everywhere with Jack? You see what I'm saying? Like, he's got to keep up with his dog. What's that?
Well,
like?
Widow in the Protector, the book I just had come out in January 1st of 2020 or December 31st of 2021. Can't remember, but New Year's anyway. So that was only not even 2 months ago. There is a German Shepherd in that one, and his name's Scout, I think. And his owner tragically gets murdered. And so Jack Widow takes the dog on, and they go and basically seek revenge. That's not the plot, but that's sort of a subplot. And the dog, because it was already a trained police dog and his owner's dead, he understands that he's with Widow because Widow is the person that has taken him under his wing. And so they bond over, the same mission, basically.
Yeah.
They're both going to save this woman and her little boy. And the dog had bonded with the little boy already, So Jack Widow, he didn't know that the dog was a trained tactical dog until the owner died, right?
Okay.
And it turned out he was. And so when Jack Widow, gives him a command, he doesn't know the commands the dog knows. But they're on the same level. They're on the same instinct too. There's both the same primal instinct, and that's to take out these bad guys and save this little kid. And so the dog's going to do what he's going to do, and just kind of works out, I mean, I can't really explain it. I didn't really write it from I never did a chapter from the dog's point of view or nothing.
So I know you mentioned to me earlier, we're talking about Jack. He's this kind of wandering hero. One thing I wanted to ask you about is working in this genre where you've got a hero that kind of takes matters into his own hands. I know I've heard from people, I'm sure you've heard from people that feel, readers almost seem to feel a little vindicated by that. It's a little bit of, you see injustice in the world, and then you have a hero on the page who makes things right, which is not the way the real world works out always. And there's a vindication there. There's a satisfaction there. Have you seen that? I mean, what part of that plays into Widows?
It's a complicated question, really.
It is,
especially being an American. We've seen so many injustices over the last, pretty much since I've been alive. There's been just injustice left and right. But being in my group, and probably your age group, the 90s, the 80s, they call that the vacation from history, and it really was. I mean, we did not know how good we had it in the 90s and the 80s. There were things that happened, like Oklahoma City bombing, for example, Waco, Texas, but nothing like 9/11. Ever since 9/11, it has just been a catastrophe after a catastrophe on a big scale. Big scale. So little injustices, from like George Floyd to, just name it, the kids at Sandy Hook, murder that goes unsolved, the murders that we don't even see, remember, not that long ago, there was the Gabby Petito, I think is her name, where she went missing, and then Brian Landry, what might be his name, her boyfriend killed her.
I think so.
That's just like one case I guess you can consider that justice since he's no longer with us, maybe, but there's so many cases of just people missing, people murdered, people, hurt, rapes, all these things, these horrible things that just go unpunished. They go on, unresolved. And the way I look at justice is not about vengeance. It's never been about vengeance. It's sort of more about balance and restoration, right?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, in the real world, I do believe in karma. I think karma does come back on people. Like Brian Landry, right? For example,
Yeah,
got what was coming to him, and
that was tough.
yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we don't really get to see it. So for me, justice is about restoring balance, about restoration of and peace. Um, so the thing about like Jack Widow is it's almost the same thing with like Batman. You know, Batman's a really great example. Not the Punisher. Punisher is about revenge. That's not about justice. There's a reason why Batman is the they keep remaking all these Batman movies, and Batman is more popular than he's ever been. And it's because for him, it started out as a story of revenge. His parents are murdered. In the original, and I'm not talking about like the one with the Joker doing with Jack Nicholson. I mean the original comic book. His parents are murdered by just a mugger, just a random mugger, and he goes to kill him because he thinks he's going to get off, and then someone else kills him, right? So he's robbed of his moment of revenge, right? And then he realizes that it's really about justice, is about protecting those that can't help themselves, you know, that can't protect themselves, or the system has failed them, and that's what makes a hero. Like the Punisher, although I love the Punisher, it's very satisfying. That show is really great. Um, that's more of a primal satisfaction of revenge. Everybody,
Yeah,
I like a good revenge story like the next person, right? But revenge is not justice. The Punisher is
yeah.
not a hero. You know, Batman is a hero. Now, Batman doesn't kill people, or he does, depending on what comic books you're reading. But I like that he has a code, like a code of honor. Now, Widow kills people, okay, but they had it coming, you know,
Yeah.
and and that's very satisfying for me I can't say for from a reader standpoint, but as an author, I love taking vengeance out or justice out on those who escape it, in the Widow franchise. So right now, this may play into your next question too. I'm working on this book called The Kill Promise, or
Yeah,
Kill
I wanted to ask you
Promise.
about that.
I
Yeah.
might drop the D off. I haven't decided, but it's Kill Promise. And what started this one is I remember seeing this story a couple of years ago about it's something like every time, it's almost become an urban legend. Every time I hear it, the number changes, but it's something about 80 or 100 missing Native American women and children in the South Dakotas, or both Dakota
Mhm.
region. Some of that spills into Canada too. And they just are completely unsolved. And not only that, but nobody's talking about, or like people don't talk about it so much. It's not in the media so
Really?
much.
I've not
Yeah.
heard of this.
Yeah. And so if you Googled something like that, you're going to find the number is much, much higher, but that's across the entire Americas, right?
Mhm.
Where Native indigenous women and children, they go missing, they're not all tied together, but justice is undone for a lot of those people. And so in researching that kind of story, and again, as I said, some of it's a little bit urban legendish. It may not all be the same. They may not be connected. But my idea is what if there was missing women, or murdered whatever, and Widow gets pulled into this, and realizes that like no one's interested in this. No one, the FBI is not solving this case. Nothing's happening. And so that's what the Kill Promise is. I've already figured out who the bad guy is, and Widow will take justice on them, let's say.
Mhm.
And for me, that's very satisfying in a world where justice is not always, sought through. A lot of times it's not. So let me talk about the kill promise for a second.
Yeah, please do.
My deal with the kill promise is Widow. I don't have all the details worked out, so I may be a little vague. But Widow goes to he's wandering as he does, and he ends up at a medal ceremony, like a Navy medal ceremony somewhere. Maybe he's traveling through DC. Maybe he's in a Navy town. I really can't remember what I wrote or how I worked that out yet. And there's a woman who's supposed to get a Medal of Honor, and she's a Native American woman, and she was in the Navy. He was in the Navy, and they're about the same age, or she's a little younger than him. And she doesn't show up for it. And that seems really peculiar to him. Why would there's not a lot of Native American women who have received the Medal of Honor. I know there are some who have gotten the Purple Heart and other medals. There may not even be one who's gotten the Medal of Honor. That's a huge medal, right?
Yeah. The medal.
The medal. And he's really curious, why would she devote, 10, 15, 20 years of her life to the Navy and not show up? So being who he is, he's got to go figure this out. And so as he ends up at a small town where she's from, last seen, it's a town I made up. I think it's in North Dakota. It's like a lake town border. It's split between Canada and North Dakota. So there's like a north side and a south side, and they're two different countries, but it's really the same town. It's called like Sawyer Lake. And so Widow starts to discover that there's been a few missing or like murders unsolved, sort of in a huge area of women, right? Or people. I haven't decided if it'll be both. And so he starts to suspect, well, is this a serial killer? Is this a group of, militia? Is this a group of racists? Is this personal? And he's really interested because this woman is missing, and he's connected to her because he wants to, because of their Navy family. And so I don't want to give too much away, but that's kind of where I'm at. And of course, he partners up with the local sheriff, who's a woman, and they try to figure it out, and that's where I'm at. So in every book, sometimes I'll start with here's a really good one. There's one called Patriot Lies, which is about that thick. It's real long.
Oh, it's one of your big ones.
It's a big one. Yeah, it's not even the biggest, but it's a big one. It's probably third. It's like 650, 700 pages. And that one, there's at the very beginning, Widows in DC. You'll see how my patterns, when I explain this, it'll come together for you. Widows in DC, and he reads, in a newspaper that there's a homeless man that was set on fire, and he was murdered, or he set himself on fire. As you do when you're smoking, drunk, you light yourself on fire or whatever. It looks like an accident. But the thing is this guy had a Purple Heart. He was in the, I think he was in the Army, or maybe it was the Navy. I can't remember. But he's in a military family, and he's having a funeral and a wake. Well, the wake, there's a news article about him, because not only is it weird that he just lit himself up on fire, but also no one is planning to go to the wake. Like, they're saying nobody has, he doesn't have any family. Nobody's going. So Widow feels like he has to go to this guy's wake because, he was in the Navy too, and all these things.
The camaraderie.
Right. And it's a shame that nobody's going, which happens, veterans become homeless and they die, and people don't even know. They go off forgotten, right? And Widow, being that he loves justice, he's got to go to this guy's wake, at least in his funeral, and, show his respects. And he goes, and the first person he meets is a lawyer. There's no one there. There's a lawyer there with a business suit, high-powered lawyer. And the lawyer is so happy to see him. He wants to know how he knows the dead homeless veteran. And Widow says, well, I don't. He tells him what I told you. He feels a camaraderie, so he shows up. And the lawyer says, well, I'm trying to find his next of kin because he's worth $100 million or $20 million or something ridiculous. But he was homeless, sleeping on a park bench, right? So Widow's like, why is this guy sleeping on a park bench if he had $20 million in stocks, right? So he starts to investigate this, and it turns out the guy was murdered. which isn't giving anything away. You find out right at the beginning. He's murdered, and that money has something to do with it, and he was homeless for a reason. And so the bad guys, I knew who they were. And it's kind of based on, without giving it away, the bad guys are based on a real Navy SEAL, or a couple of Navy SEALs who did a couple of really bad things. And I'll leave it at that. And Jack Widow, goes down this mystery and solves it, and, takes out the bad guys as he does. Right. And he's not opposed to the police arresting them. If the police will arrest them, that's fine. But the bad guys usually always turn out to be someone who has so much power, or the system's so corrupted that and not only that, but a lot of times it's self-defense. When he's not like just going to kill them. He has a couple of times, but most of the time he only goes after the ones that are untouchable, but most of the time it's like a self-defense situation where he's trying to rescue someone or something like that. He's not just a vigilante like the Punisher is just about killing mobsters. You don't really give him two shits about what's right or what's wrong. Jack Widow has a very deep sense of right and wrong. And when someone, and there's levels. I mean, if somebody jaywalks, he's not going to go punish them for it. But if someone kills a fellow, seaman or a military person, service member, in such a brutal way by lighting them on fire, and the guy did nothing wrong, and and nobody cares about it, then Jack Widow is going to step in and take care of that. And that's basically my sense of justice on that,
And that's
it is very satisfying. Very satisfying.
With the word outlaw, right? Because it's he's a drifter outlaw hero. That's kind of that outlaw part. Is that not vigilantism so much as just stepping in and taking the consequences on the chin if necessary.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Scott, man, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Sure, dude. It was great talking to you, man.